show support. So she says, if you know they've been in a location for a while, let the public know that if you have any questions, they can come back and come find you. So you can like pass out a leaflet, and like when we're at Veg Fest, we give people our business cards and say like, hey, if you guys have any questions, get in touch with us anytime. We're happy to support you and talk to you about anything. And also just giving that people, like even at Veg Fest, like, hey, can we give you a leaflet? People, maybe they don't want to talk to us then, but you know what, if you want to come back, we'll be here until this time. And some people did, right? And so it's a good opportunity to give people, maybe they'll go read this, maybe cry in the bathroom or something, and then, no, I shouldn't say that. That was a bad joke, I'm sorry guys. And then they'll come back and talk to you about it, right? And so it's just kind of knowing that, hey, you're open to talking about it, you're there to support people. And then her fourth tip says, find something that you can relate to them with. So whether it be someone who's more difficult or someone who's already interested, because connecting to people and building that relationship and that rapport is what can kind of have that deeper impact and maybe actually get people to think about activism or animals' realities. So I know like there's a video by Joey Carbstrong, I don't know if we're gonna have time to watch it today, but he was talking about how when he talked to someone, whether it's like say an older person or someone who's like a teenager, he tries to kind of approach them and meet people on their level. So he's not going to maybe use the same language or talk in the exact same way to a teenager, but be like, hey man, I like your shirt or something. Or just like, build that kind of rapport. And people just want to feel that they're listened to and feel heard. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. So even if it's like, I know for me sometimes it's hard because I'm just like, oh, I have so much to say. But just taking that moment to really just step back and just listen to someone and let them get it out. Depending on how, if it's abusive, obviously we'll talk about that in a minute. We don't tolerate that kind of stuff. But if they just want to share a story or something, because I find for a lot of people, especially the people who I think are going to go vegan or be an activist, they've had some sort of experience either with animal abuse as a kid, or they really care about animals, or some sort of thing in that way. So sometimes I find people want to tell you that story, like, oh, well, yeah, when I was a kid, I saw this animal being abused, or, for me, it was like my uncle was a farmer, right? So I saw these things. So people just want to sometimes share those stories, so let them get it out. Yeah. And so she talks about how, when I first met Jev, she grew up on a farm. So her dad was a pig farmer. So she kind of tells people that story, and that you can kind of build that connection too, right? Like, hey, I understand what you're talking about because I went through that too. All right, so number 5 is don't be afraid to approach people after you see them reading and ask them if they have questions or comments about the information that they're reading. So this is probably one of the hardest things, especially if you're more of an introverted or shy person, because I know sometimes, I talk, but I find it hard sometimes to just go up to someone, but if we can find that within us sometimes, that's where a really good connection can happen. Because someone might be reading something and you can go up to them and say hey, I just saw you reading that leaflet. Do you want to talk about it? And that's when a really good conversation, right, could happen. So I think that's really important. But she says, warning, mentioning comments may bring about negative opinions from some people, because someone could be reading this and they could be just an angry person who is like, well, this is stupid, I don't give a shit about animals. And you have to be ready for that, right? And we'll talk about that and how do we deal with that kind of stuff in a minute. But like she says, so I will ask them what they think, if it's funny or what comments they have, and try to turn it around and engage them in a positive conversation. So say okay, well, I understand, maybe this could be upsetting to you, or what do you find funny about it? Because to me, animal abuse isn't funny. Why do you find it funny? So kind of turning it around and spinning it in a more positive way could be a way to deal with that. So number 6, she says, is tell stories. So she says, if you can, try and tell a fact or a story, because it'll be easier for some people to understand. So some people really want to take in facts and numbers, and for other people, they'll completely tune out. It just depends what kind of person you are, what kind of learner you are. For me, I appreciate the facts, and the numbers and that kind of stuff. But for other people, they want to hear a story about this animal. So that's why I don't know if anyone's familiar with the group DXE. So they often will share things about animals' lives. They name all the animals they rescue. They talk about them as individuals, as you know, as a part of their family when they're rescued, because that's their kind of tactic, is sharing the animal stories and animals' lives with people, because we need to, like, I think, I'm so sorry, what was your name?
Oh, Janelle.
Janelle had said that, you know, it's so normalized, we need to unnormalize it, and that's a really good way that we can unnormalize animal abuse, is by saying, like, you know, this animal, yeah, so like Esther the Wonder Pig, that's the example that I like to bring up with people, because Esther the Wonder Pig is amazing, and she's a part of a family, and she's just, you know, a unique individual who lives with these two awesome guys, right? And so it's a really good story. She's known around the world, and people can see, like, that story, and Esther and her dads have done such a good job of really trying to unnormalize animal abuse of pigs. So I think that's like a really good story that you can go with. That's just what I do. That's just an example. But yeah, so I think there's just like different ways of reaching people, and when you get comfortable with it, and like one thing I should say too is that it just takes practice, right? And so once you're talking to people, you'll kind of figure out kind of what kind of stories or facts or what ways that you like to engage with people, and once you talk to them for a minute or two, you'll kind of learn maybe, okay, this person might be more of a fact person, or this person might be more of a story person. So that's just something to think about as well. All right, so we'll move on to number 7. So this is really important too. Learn to read people and read their body language. So we all have a personal bubble and personal space, so I think it's always important to like start off with really trying to respect a good boundary and space with people. And if you are having a conversation with them and maybe naturally you guys move closer, that's okay, right? But I think it's really important to, like, you know, read people and see how they're feeling. And, you know, she says, try and feel the person's energy. If someone's backing away from you, but they still are engaged, don't walk close into their space. Be respectful of their comfort zone, even if you like to engage closer. And sometimes, you know, you can tell when people are talking about this and they might be like all tensed up, you know, holding a leaflet, because it's upsetting information, right? So we can look at, you know, maybe finding ways that we can talk to them and see, like, hey, you know, that looks like that could be upsetting for you. You know, what fact did you read, or what did you read that was upsetting? Do you want to talk about it? Or, you know, if some people are very angry, you can tell, right? Just the kind of closed fists, standing very straight, maybe just the look on their face. So maybe you might want to give that person a minute, or maybe not go up to them or something. Just kind of, I mean, everyone, we're adults, we can figure that kind of stuff out. But I just think that's an important tip that she brings forward. Is just really just, you know, reading people in this situation. So number 8, she says, listen and ask questions. So be unique to that person and the situation and listen to them. We can all grow and build on this daily. Listen without the need to always respond. It will help build a genuine connection, which will make, when you do respond, more powerful. And I think I mentioned that earlier, and that's something that's challenging for me personally, but I think that's so important, like active listening without always responding, so you can actually really listen to what they're saying without trying to formulate a response, because a response will come to you when that pause is ready for you to respond. And I think asking questions too is a really good way of just trying to bring out more information in people. And we'll watch a video and we'll talk kind of about the Socratic method of asking questions. But it's always better to ask questions instead of judge or make assumptions or say, you know, assume, right? Because, I mean, that's how a lot of relationships and interactions go in our world, is based on assumptions. But when you're doing outreach and talking about something that's so difficult, asking questions, I think, is a really good way to also, like, disarm. I don't know if that's the right word, but, you know, if it could be a heated situation, but just asking a question. Like, hey, do you have a dog at home? That's what I like to also ask people. So what do you think, you know, if someone was hurting your dog, what's the difference between that and hurting a pig or something like that? But yeah, I think listening is just such a key skill. It's for anything, right? Not just public education and outreach for activism, but just actually listening to people without always feeling the need to respond. So number 9, she says, remember why you're doing this, and it's for the animals. So sometimes that may mean putting aside your own opinions and attitudes to create more positive change for the animals. And this also, I'd say, is probably one of the most challenging things, because you know, someone could be talking about something that you really don't agree with. It could be something completely separate. But obviously we don't tolerate like racism or sexism or homophobia or any of those types of things. But it could just be something that you have a very strong opinion about, and they're bringing it into the conversation. But just always want to remember we're doing this for the animals. So even if someone is upsetting you, try not to take it personally, even though, I mean, it is upsetting and I don't want to discount people's feelings or emotions, because I know there's been times where I've got very upset, and that's okay to feel that. But it's important to try to put like our own attitudes or emotions aside in that moment if we can, and just really keep it focused on the animals. And if people start getting off topic on different tangents, and say like, hey, okay, I understand that might be how you feel about that, but here today we're talking about animals and animal abuse or animal agriculture or whatever, to try to bring it back to animals, because that is why we're doing this, right? And you can also say like, hey, you might have a really good connection with someone, and hey, I love chatting about politics with you, but here's my email, why don't we continue this conversation? If you feel comfortable with that. Like, I'm not telling you to volunteer an email, but there's just ways to kind of still keep a positive conversation, but try to direct it back and keep focused on what we're trying to do. So this point is really, really important, number 10, and then I'll kind of go into how do we deal with challenging people.
Yeah. Maybe after this we'll just cut for a break for like 10 minutes, just so you guys can use the washroom and just chill, and then we'll come back maybe. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just been sitting for a long time.
Yeah. We started a bit late. Would you guys be okay with 5 more minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
We'll talk about number 10, and then we'll maybe just briefly talk about how do we react to difficult conversations. Because number 10 is about that. So learn to be okay disengaging from some conversations. So unfortunately, some people are just there to give you a hard time. So some people see activists and they will come up to us, and you know that they just want to start a fight. And remember, it's not about you. I cannot stress that enough. It's not about you. Maybe they have their own personal shit going on. Or what I often like to think is people who have the strongest reactions to this is that deep down they know. They know that why we're doing this and that we are right and that animals are being abused, but they just can't deal with it at that point in their life and they cannot face it. So it comes out for them in an anger reaction. Or the other time is that when you're talking to someone and the conversation is just not going anywhere, and you've already spent 10 minutes and this person is just talking in circles, or and then it's getting off topic. You don't need to win. There's no like animal education outreach Olympics. Like, you don't need to keep it going. Like, you're not gonna let the animals down by not getting them to agree with you or have a positive outcome to that conversation. Sometimes it's best to just move on and walk away because there's just no positive outcome. Maybe not, I shouldn't say no positive outcome, but just maybe not the outcome that you want is going to happen. And we're not gonna change everyone's minds. And there comes a point where these people are just wasting our time because there's other people that we could be talking to and saving our energy for. And so what I like to do is just kind of say like, okay, well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today, but I don't feel like this conversation is moving forward. So I'm just gonna ask that we end this conversation now, and I hope you have a really good day. Thanks for stopping by. It can be tough to say that, and it does take practice, but sometimes that's just what you gotta do. So, yeah. But yeah, I think Dana had a good point. Maybe we'll talk about challenging people after the break. But I just wanted to see if anyone has any questions or wants to talk about anything before we take a break.
Just a small.
Yeah, and then we'll get to you. Yeah.
Very small. What I've done while doing activism notices when you learn about all the stuff, you want to just talk, and tell people about, oh, this is what happens, this is what happens. But the good point is after listening to Earthling Ed, it's more about asking questions than putting our opinion on themselves, because then you know what the problem is. Like when we were at the UFW last week, we didn't have any video to talk about that we can't show them abuse. So my first question was, do you love animals?